This film is about Yacht Appaloosa and the 2019 Round the Island race. The race starts and finishes at Cowes on the Isle of Wight and takes an anti-clockwise route around the island. We've got our onboard race pack, our reminder of the racing rules, and the safety booklet with the all-important information about the hazards of the course, such as the wreck of the Valvassi lurking just beneath the surface of the sea off the Needles. There's also advice on how to avoid running into it. The crew were raising funds for the Cystic Fibrosis Trust. It was time for Mike, Steve, Cliff, Keith and Gary to go.
You can see massive boats heading towards Cowes here. Absolutely huge numbers of them. All the way across the horizon.
We waited for our start in the south waiting area just off Cowes. The favourable tide seemed much stronger there. In the waiting area you had to really keep a sharp lookout. There were boats coming at us from all directions. It would have been very easy to have a collision. We'd looked at the starting line the day before the race, but now trying to find it on the day of the race proved very difficult. There seemed to be loads of starting lines all over the place. Was this the one we needed? Sadly no, it was this one, and we were somewhat further behind the line than we really wanted to be when the gun went.
We're just approaching the start line. In fact, we're about 1 minute and 45 seconds from the start of the race. Very apprehensive on the boat, making sure that we don't cross the start line any sooner than we should do. 10 seconds. That's the start of our race. So we're off. Let that all out, Keith. Find your heads, folks. We're sailing, we're across the start line, and we're with a load of boats in our class. All these other blokes flying the same colour flags as us. We're all in our group. And that is it, we're off. The plan now is to try and find some wind and beat all these boats. Okay, we're back live. We've sorted out a few snags. I think that's probably the best polite way to put it. A few snags. We do seem to be being overtaken though, just behind us. I've raised this with the skipper. He tells me there's nothing he can do about it. Whatever that means. It'd be great if some of you could join us and comment.
The crew, but that doesn't seem
Appreciate it's early, 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, but hello to anyone who's watching this retrospectively. We are out doing the Race for All, it's now classified as. If you search hashtag Race for All, you're probably going to find lots and lots of video clips about today's race. This is the Round the Island race, and we're raising money for Cystic Fibrosis Trust. We'd really appreciate it, actually, if you could give us a link. We've been up since about 5:45 this morning when the skipper raised us, trying to get us out of our pits, so as we could start today's race. We've been about 20 minutes, maybe 15-20 minutes into the race. In that time, we have changed our sails. However, it did take longer than it did in the practice putting up of the our cruising chute yesterday.
Watch your heads, boys.
Mind your heads. This is obviously another thing that we have to be careful of in the race is the boom. Don't want to catch your head on that. So Gary and Steve went to put the cruising chute up.
Right, no matter. The main thing was we weren't over the start line before we were meant.
Can I just interrupt you, sorry Skipper? I think you need to have a look at the view.
Yeah, have a look at all the other flag boats with turquoise flag, because they're the ones we're really competing with.
I think, folks, you really want to just look at the pretty scene. Look at all these colourful sails out. Hang on, Skipper. We'll come back to you in a moment. Just enjoying the view of the boats. Just a minute. Sorry. Did you want to speak again?
We need immediate assistance. There is a massive head injury on board. We're just outside the crowd. We just started.
Behind us. Yeah. We can't do anything.
So you might have just heard there, someone has been hit by the boom at the start of the race, someone with a head injury. Emergency call, which just brings out back to you the dangers on board a yacht during a race.
We're all stopping.
So, Dad, you were saying about the race.
Yeah, since the start, which wasn't our best, we got our cruising chute up, and that's really come on a bit of pace. So we've worked our way back through several boats.
Mayday promises this is Coast Guard, Roger. Do you have a latitude and longitude for your position, over?
Roughly in the middle of our fleet at the moment.
Can you repeat that, over?
Thank you, Felicity and Sheila, for joining us. Thank you for your donations to Yacht Appaloosa's team. Appreciate those. So you notice we're actually having to delayer here. The wind has died and the sun is definitely warm. Lots of sun cream on today.
We've got wind over there. By the time we'd reached Hurst Narrows, we were in the middle of the turquoise flag fleet.
Okay, thanks for joining us again live on Team Appaloosa's Facebook page. It's 11:26 and we're just rounding the Needles. You should be able to see them in the background there. Just going past those. We have had some speedy sailing and some not so speedy sailing. In fact, at one point I think we were going backwards. But we'll catch up. You see all the boats behind us. If you've been keeping an eye on our tracker, we are about, I would say, in the region of about halfway amongst our class, which isn't too bad actually. We'll catch up with the skipper, shall we? Hello, skipper.
Hi, Cliff.
Got a shout so as I can hear you at home.
Yeah, we've just come through a very tricky stretch of the race through the Needles where there's really next to no wind at all, and we've been spun round by eddies in the sea and turbulence in the air, what little wind there was, and we, along with other boats, found ourselves pointing in almost in the wrong direction completely. But we managed to regain control, steerage, and we've got ourselves to the end of the level with the Needles Lighthouse now, and we've got a bit of wind, so hopefully we're going to start to make a bit of ground up with the rest of our fleet.
So it's 11:27 now. What time? I mean, dinner is booked, isn't it?
Dinner
for 8 p.m.
8 p.m. So that is clearly we're planning to finish well before that.
And are we going to?
Oh, I imagine so.
Now, earlier on, there was a few close calls with a few boats. We had to, at one point, I noticed you were instructing the boat next to you, but they got the rules wrong.
Yes, he was on a collision course for us, but we had to call starboard on him. And it was quite an amusing situation because he said, "Oh, you're on port." We had to explain to him the rules of the race, which were that port or starboard is determined by the position of our boom and not by our head sail.
Well, look at that RNLI flying past us. Just shows you that there are some people who are struggling with the conditions today. We've heard a few pan calls, and that is something really. People who've been donating to us are donating because there are challenges in this race.
You can't see the wind gauge, it's coming there. Thank you.
Challenges with this race, then, Skipper.
Well, very light airs. You have to try and make the maximum what little wind there is. It's a matter of trying to turn the boat and adjust the sails all the time to fit in which direction the wind is coming from. It's changing all the time, so it's a matter of concentrating hard and forever adjusting the sails.
And there was a mayday call at the start of the race we heard where
Apparently someone had been hit on the head with a boom off cows. I had to call some first aid emergency people out to help them.
again, just shows the challenges. What we're asking people to do is to donate whatever they can today as we sail for cystic fibrosis, part of one of the largest sailing races, in fact, in the world in terms of the number of competitors, which makes it challenging. We're asking people to visit our link at the top of our Facebook page, which we'll also post in this video for you for ease. And if you could just give as much as £1, that would be brilliant, and help us to smash our targets. We're trying to raise £2,000 for the Cystic Fibrosis Trust today. That's what we're asking, isn't it?
That's what we're asking.
Thank you very much for your time. We will catch up with you later in the day, no doubt. I think he's concentrating. Let's catch up with some of the rest of the crew. See what we've got here. We've got Keith. Keith, good afternoon. Afternoon, is it? Morning still?
Still morning.
So, can't see the gauge. The gauge is very important. This is the gauge he's on about, folks. Good to see it here. The wind gauge. He needs to know where the wind's coming from. So when the skipper keeps banging on at us, he can't see the gauge. That's what he's on about. Just pan round for you. See the number of boats that are currently trying to round the Needles. There's the Needles for you, the lighthouse at the end. A landmark for most sailors around this sort of coast. Let's just join some of the crew. So, Keith, this is your first race?
This is my first race.
Your first race, enjoying it?
Yeah, it's fantastic, I must say.
Yeah.
I was quite surprised how calm it was at the beginning. I'm not talking about the mood of the crew. I'm talking about the weather conditions.
Yeah.
And now it seems just as we're passing around the Needles, we're picking up a different type of weather and more wind, and there are bigger waves, and it looks like the Armada out there. It's
What a teamwear. I like your hat.
Thank you very much.
We're going to try and catch up with some of the rest of the crew. It's just water state's just got a bit choppy here. You might be able to see we're bouncing around quite a bit. It doesn't make it easy. Just another of the challenges. Look at your face. Skipper's trying to see what's underneath his sail in terms of other vessels so we don't hit anyone. and it is getting rather dicey. People tacking, needing to tack quickly. It's quite a challenge here. Although the sun's out and it's a nice day, there are lots of boats getting very close to each other, and the sea state is not helping with that. In fact, we're going to cut this broadcast short because I think we might need all hands on deck. We'll speak to you probably the other side of the Needles now. Thanks for watching.
After the Needles, a lot of boats stayed inshore hoping to pick up a favourable tide, but we on Appaloosa went offshore where the wind was much stronger.
There you go. They're the Needles, and that was the last broadcast we passed the Needles, so really in the last 2 hours I don't think the skipper's brought us very far. What have you got to say on that?
Well, the trouble is really, I asked Steve to take the helm about 2 or 3 hours ago. I thought we were making
Hang on, let's just come to first mate on that. What have you got to say on that, first mate?
At one stage I was actually on deck on my own and the sound of snoring come from below was dreadful. It really was. But anyway, we think we've got a plan. Yeah, whether it works out or not, we know we've got no certainty at all on that one. Because within the next hour or two the wind is supposed to be going round to the southwest, which hopefully will mean that we're at a bit of an advantage being out here, because we may be able to get rounds and Catherines without putting in too long a tack.
After another hour or two, we'd worked our way back inshore and we're off St Catherine's Lighthouse, where we hope to pick up a strong favourable tide. It was at this point that the wind failed us, down to 2 knots. We're not going anywhere in this wind. Can it get any worse? Actually, yes. 1.5 knots. We were going absolutely nowhere.
Join us for what will be our final broadcast live from yacht Appaloosa. Join with the skipper to bring you a urgent update in relation to the crew status. Mike Goodwin.
Yeah, sadly, with regret, we've decided to retire from the race. We found ourselves becalmed off Ventnor. We floated around there in rather uncomfortable waves, going absolutely nowhere for probably about an hour, hour and a half. And we calculated that since we've still got 20 miles to go to the finish line, we'd need to suddenly start moving at about 5 knots to get to the finish line before the formal end of the race, which should be at 10:30. And since we've been becalmed for a good while, and quite an uncomfortable motion of the boat as well at that point in time, we decided there's little prospect of that. Excuse me. So we've decided to call it a day. Excuse me.